Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for the 2023 NCAA Division I Wrestling Championships. I am your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network and the lead engineer on the Bo Nickel War Wagon. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Bo Nickel's father actually started following me on Twitter, so that was kind of cool. He tweets all my stuff, so I am like a second son to him. So
yeah, I mean, you got the same complexion and hair color.
Yes.
You could be the other Nickel brother. I'm picturing Bo Nickel's dad as just being this gritty old wrestler like Vern Gagne.
I think he's like a pastor or something.
Okay. That's Sunday. On Monday, he'll whoop your ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this is a first. As far as I'm aware, in the history of the Sherdog Radio Network, certainly in the history of the Shillan and Duffy show, but any of you watching or listening to this that are used to our UFC and other MMA event previews and recaps know that we both approach MMA as former wrestlers who are very much still fans of amateur wrestling. Keith has kept up with it better over the years than I have, but even I am that casual that tunes in around this time every year to see which teams are doing great, which individual wrestlers are doing great. I always pay close attention to it at the Olympics, but for Keith, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that outside of MMA, this is the sporting event that Keith gets most excited for every year.
Dude, this actually might be more excited for this than actual MMA. And the reason why I'll say is the international wrestling obviously is year round, but NCAA wrestling is a short period of time. The NCAA is just one event. This is the big one all year. So imagine if we had MMA building up for one huge event for the entire year, and you had everybody on the roster, all the best guys. That's why I think I might get even more excited. Like I'm super pumped for this week. There's so many great things going on. I'm so excited, dude.
And honestly, it's nationwide, so it's even people that wouldn't have had a chance necessarily to meet during the regular season. I mean, take Keith's idea of this once a year thing where everybody's in, but also imagine that at that time, once a year, you could figure out, well, hey, whether Vadim Nemkov really could beat Jamal Hill, or whether Ryzen's top bantamweights and flyweights could beat their counterparts in the UFC. It kind of answers all in one crazy week, which is something that I sort of wish we had in MMA.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to keep doing, which I normally don't do in our previews, I'm going to keep looking to my left just because I have the NCAA brackets here. Yep. So that's why I couldn't get it on this screen and still look at you and everything.
That's
so
fine.
I do have. So if I'm looking over like this, I'm not ignoring you, Ben. I'm just checking the brackets, make sure I have everything correct.
Let's get just a few logistical things out of the way here. The NCAA Division I Wrestling Championships take place starting this Thursday. That is March 16th at the BOK Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They will be easy to watch this year. They're going to be on ESPN and ESPNU. That's an improvement from the last few years where sometimes you've had to go to lesser known cable providers and it's just generally been kind of hard to watch. This year, it's going to be easy to watch. So if you're an MMA fan watching this and kind of want to know what it's like, this is your perfect year to tune in. As I said before, Keith and I are both fans of collegiate wrestling, fans of international amateur wrestling, but we work in the MMA space. So we will be looking at these not only from the perspective of who's likely to win this year, what are some of the storylines going into the tournament, but who are some of the people participating this week that we might be likely to see in an MMA cage within the next 2 to 5 years, or wish we would see. And from that point of view, I kind of wanted to ask you, Keith, and I'll tell you, when I look at collegiate wrestlers, or when I have over the years, how they're going to do or how they would do in mixed martial arts is definitely not a one-to-one relationship with how dominant they were in college. When I look at a collegiate wrestler as a possible prospect to cross over to MMA one day, there are two basic things that I look for. One is raw athleticism. It's not a must-have, but it definitely helps. Absolutely. Like if you just to name a couple of examples that were teammates, Michael Chandler and Tyron Woodley. both of whom, I mean, they were outstanding technical wrestlers. They were both, All-Americans, but explosive athleticism made their game run. And both of those guys, I said, they learned to throw a punch and not shoot right into a guillotine. They could do some damage in MMA, and that has turned out to be the case. I looked at Ben Askren. Ben Askren overperformed in MMA compared to how I thought he would have done. Like if all you saw was his last couple fights in the UFC, you missed out on an outstanding career. He became a fantastic MMA grappler. Looking back historically, I can't say this for a fact, obviously, because there wasn't even an MMA at the time, but just talking about two of the greatest collegiate wrestlers of all time, I'm comfortable saying that John Smith would have been a so-so MMA fighter and Dan Gable would have been a great one, just based on athleticism and attitude.
Dan Gable would have been fantastic. I don't know. I'm going to disagree on John Smith. I think John Smith, he definitely didn't have that mean streak, but he was so smooth that I don't know. I can see it. Yeah, I don't know. I can't say a bad word about John Smith. I'm the biggest John Smith fan in the world. I think he's the greatest American wrestler ever.
And so. I'm completely on board with you. And the time I was coming up as a high school wrestler and became a really big fan of college wrestling, I mean, he was it. I graduated from high school in the early 90s. Like, John Smith was the American hero for wrestling. So, I mean, you might be right, but it doesn't come out as screamingly as Gable, a guy that even in his wrestling matches seemed ready to throw down at any moment. He was a combative wrestler.
Yeah.
Aside from that, like, what do you look for that makes a wrestler stand out to you as an MMA prospect?
I definitely like the style of a wrestler. The guys that are passive and more of a defensive wrestler, I don't think would transition well. So, a guy I think it would be like Max Dean, reigning national champion 187. I don't think he'd be that good as an MMA. I mean, obviously they'd be good, but I'm saying world champions. Will Lewan would not be a guy that I think the guys that are very aggressive styles and, explode through your hips kind of guys. Obviously, they all can scramble if you're at this level, but I think willingness to learn jiu-jitsu, not coming in with the attitude. Think of a guy like Chris Weidman, who came into MMA, really focused on jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, learning how to adapt their wrestling, mix it in. There's a guy we'll talk about later on that's already been trained in MMA, a little bit. So that guy I think would be because he's willing to learn. So those are two things that really stand out. And also, like, God-given, like, length. The guys who are lengthy, like you think of like a John Jones, like a Bo Nickel, that had this God-given long arms, long legs. I think they do well too.
So, for example, your more compactly built wrestlers, they can excel. I mean, you look at Michael Chandler, but they have a different route. And Chandler, again, is blessed with some of the greatest fast twitch athleticism we've seen in MMA. So he had other ways to make his striking game work than just pure length. And no, I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, I also think being in the right weight class too matters. Heavyweight wrestlers succeed pretty easily because it's easier to transition to heavyweight, meaning that there's less guys who can wrestle. I think women's MMA wrestlers really succeed because, generally speaking, there's not many female out there with wrestling backgrounds. So those are the two other things that I think stand out.
Well, no, weight class is a great observation. If you're coming into a less crowded weight class, it helps you. And obviously, Bo Nickel is both our hero and something a bit of a running, like, I don't want to say joke because he's far from a joke, but we go back and forth and it's varying degrees of serious, but you take his same credentials and he's coming in as like a former 133 pounder. You might be excited about him, but he's got to climb one hell of a hill.
Yeah, absolutely. Walking in middleweight, it helps.
Yeah. I mean, considering that your current UFC middleweight champ is a guy with like 5 professional fights, I just say no more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
If I were to ask you which high level or high profile transitioners from wrestling to MMA underperformed, that would be almost too easy a question. Plenty of them have disappointed. Can you think of any off the top of your head that you were less excited about and they overperformed compared to what you were expecting?
Yeah, I think some of the guys in Bellator right now, You think of a who's the champ? I'm sorry, I can't think of his name because I wasn't expecting the middleweight champion right now.
Johnny Eblin.
Johnny Eblin, good wrestler, not the elite level wrestling. So a guy like that, I'd say has overperformed. The D3 wrestlers, the D2 wrestlers that have transitioned, Kamaru Usman, Aljamain Sterling, these guys have really overperformed. And then the other guys, like older guys, like Rashad Evans. Matt Hughes was 4-time All-American, so yeah, but like Rashad Evans wasn't anything special.
Yeah. No, Rashad Evans, he was a Big Ten wrestler. He was at Michigan State, but he was barely over 5.
Yeah, and that's up for a Big Ten. That's one of the weaker teams.
Well, hell, dude, John Fitch was a sub 500 wrestler until his senior year.
Yeah, there you go.
And he became one of the best MMA wrestlers of his era.
Yeah, and then you got a guy like Ed Ruth, who is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, 3-time NCAA champion, and he didn't transition that well.
Right. All right, I have to share a story here. Like, since you kind of steered it in that direction, and we don't have a million years worth of time, but this one's worth it. When I first came on board at Sherdog in 2018, one of my first jobs was interviewing fighters, and it was generally up and comers. When Bellator had a big card coming, they'd send the laundry list out. Hey, this is who's available. Who'd you like to talk to? And I ended up interviewing Logan Storley 3 times in the first 12 to 15 months I was at Sherdog. I'm as big a Logan Storley fan as you'll find, and it's based, 1, on being naturally disposed to root for wrestlers, and 2, based on those conversations with him. And he taught me things about the transition of amateur wrestlers to MMA that I had never thought about before, and have informed how I think about it ever since. And I was talking to him about, wrestling and wrestlers in Bellator, and I was talking to him about Ed Ruth. And he said, yeah, I know Ed. He's a great wrestler, obviously. He's a good guy. I worked with him for a while at, Sunkist Kids when he was considering, going international in wrestling. He said, but I think that I'm the best wrestler in Bellator. I think that anyone I fight, I might win, I might lose, but I'll be the guy deciding where the fight takes place. I'm the best wrestler in Bellator. And I said, including Ed? Yeah. He's like anybody. And he said, this is why. And by way of background, Ed Ruth was a 3-time national champ. Logan Storley was a 4-time All-American, which means one of the best wrestlers of his era, but definitely a shelf below Ed Ruth, who's one of the greatest collegiate wrestlers of all time. But Logan said, while the people on the Ed Ruth level were in college, they're thinking about whether they're going to try out for the next Olympics. They're thinking about going to freestyle worlds. He's like, I started training MMA in high school. He was like, I had 10 smokers while I was in college at Minnesota. He said, so while they were getting into wrist control and turns and adapting to freestyle, I'm adapting to wrestling against a cage, because there's no form of wrestling in the world that prepares you to wrestle against the physical boundary. And in MMA, that's where most takedowns take place. Probably
70%, 80%. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, he said, I have such a head start on those guys in terms of MMA effective wrestling. And he turned out to be dead right until a few years later, he ran into Yaroslav Amosov, a multiple-time world combat Sambo champ who also happened to be way bigger than him. So I think that's part of the reason probably why the Division III schools and the junior colleges send so many elite fighters to MMA, is because they have less of that decision to make of am I going to prepare for the Olympics, or am I going to do cage fighting as soon as this college thing is over? I mean, there's a reason that Iowa Central Community College has sent more great fighters to MMA than the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, now Oklahoma State, though.
Not Oklahoma State. Well, even Oklahoma State, it's kind of surprising. They've sent some.
Oh, no, they sent, Randy Couture, Mo Lawal, Daniel Cormier. They've had their share.
Yeah, they've had their share. In comparison to their stature as a wrestling school, it's interesting how some junior college in in the middle of Iowa has sent us John Jones, Cain Velasquez, Colby Covington.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Final note about structure: collegiate wrestling in the U.S. takes place in 10 weight classes. They from 125 pounds up to heavyweight. We will be covering each weight class in turn. There are 33 men entering each divisional bracket. It's a 32-man bracket, and there's one pigtail or wrestle in match to come in and take on the top seed. So we'll be talking about each of those. Any other general thoughts about this before we dive into the individual weight classes? Any stories to watch, maybe?
Just one thing to just so people know, like if you've been a high school wrestler and you never wrestled college, another thing is there's an extra minute. There's 7 minutes. The first period is a 3-minute match. Also, there's riding time points. So basically it's a plus minus of 1 minute. So if you ride someone, say a minute and a half, but he rides you for 29 seconds, you're at 1 minute and 1 second, you get a point. You only get one bonus point. You don't get like at 2 or 3, you don't get points. So that's one thing to watch if you really want to get into it. There's a thing called throwing the brick. There's that's like an instant replay. The team can throw a brick and get an instant replay and stuff. And it really is the best level. Now, as far as there's a lot of storylines. So I don't. You want to talk about some of the top ones?
Well, yeah, some of the top ones that maybe affect everything or overarching ones, because if there were ones that just affect a single weight class, we'll talk about them when we get to them.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you to me, the top story is in the history of the NCAAs, there's been 4 guys who've ever won a 4-time national championship. That's Pat Smith, that's Cael Sanderson, that's Kyle Dake, and that's Logan Storley. This year, we could add not 1, but 2 guys to that list, as Spencer Lee at 125 and Yanni Diakomahalis at 149 are both looking for their 4th NCAA title. So it's a rare treat to have it happen, but to have it twice in the same season is unheard of. It's fit. I'm so excited for that.
Awesome.
Another one I would look at is Penn State. They've been dominating NCAAs for a while now. They dominated last year. I think they had 5 champions last year.
Wow.
That's half the weight classes. They have 4 of them returning this year with a couple other guys that could win. Penn State could realistically, if everything goes right, and some of the guys, not the favorites and like they were last year or stuff like that, but they could win 6. I really think they could win 6 weight classes out of 10.
So Penn State is not – they're not the most decorated wrestling program of all time. They're still behind Iowa and Oklahoma State. But would you say that the Penn State teams right now are year to year the most dominant we've ever seen?
Yeah, right now they are. Now they're the school. They're taking over. They've taken over for a while now, probably a decade or so, or maybe a little bit more than that. Yeah, they've dominated. I don't know how many years in a row, but even when there was like a little stretch, I think where Ohio State got one and Minnesota got one, but they were right back into winning them. Again.
Like it's the most dominant dynasty we've seen.
Well, not counting the early Oklahoma State dynasty and the Iowa dynasties, but right now, recently, yeah, they are a dynasty.
One last thing I'll ask you about: if you're a fan of, say, college football, like I am, one of the biggest stories in the sport over the last couple of years is the opening of the transfer portal, and it is completely flipped college football upside down. Like if you're thinking right now, you're thinking, okay, yeah, year to year, some of the top stars in all of college transfer and change teams and change Heisman races and change who wins the national championship. People like, Jalen Hurts, have transferred from one team to another and gone on to stardom. Has it affected wrestling as much? Do we see many top wrestlers transferring from one school to another and, taking up with their new school the next year and changing how things go?
Not as much. I mean, there's a couple. The big one this year was Real Woods. He went from Stanford now into Iowa. He's one of the favorites to win 141-pound weight class, going, from a lesser known wrestling team to one of the absolute favorites, one of the powerhouses. So that's a big one. A couple other guys that were transferred, like I know Steve Buchanan was transferred from Wyoming to, I think it was Oklahoma. He was going to go to that felt like it had. I think by the time it went through and everything, I think he decided to sit out the whole season. And there's 1 or 2 other ones but those are the top ones.
Awesome. Any other overall thoughts before we go to the individual weight classes?
Well, we could talk about it at 133, but another one to watch is Dayton Fix has lost 3 NCAA finals in a row, and he could go 0 for 4. Like it's a possibility. So that's
the 1990s Buffalo Bills of wrestling.
Yeah,
right.
It could be.
Going into the 2023 NCAA Division I championships, let's talk about the 125-pound division, the lightest division that's contested in the current structure. Keith, what's your overall thought of 125 going in here?
Well, I'll say this: it's all about Spencer Lee. He's the most dominant wrestler in all of NCAA's. I think if we had pound for pound rankings, he's a consensus number one. I think if there's 50 votes, he's getting 49 of them. But because of how good he is, think about when like Demetrius Johnson was at flyweight, and everyone else gets overlooked, and it doesn't talk about how deep it is. Because if Spencer Lee, and this has happened before, he's had serious injuries. If he dropped out right now, it's one of the deepest divisions. It's why there's so many good guys in the division. So that's my theme for this.
So it sounds as though, assuming he stays healthy, he's your favorite to win. Who would be most likely to give him trouble on the way? Yeah,
so just so people know, people think I go crazy for Bo Nickel. If Spencer Lee ever came to MMA, I would go like insane. Spencer Lee will not go down like Cael Sanderson in that realm because he did lose some matches early on. But the run he's been on recently, his senior year this year, is as dominant of a run I've ever seen. When you're pinning guys, teching guys, number 2, number 3 guys. Who's the his main competition? I'd say the one guy that kind of stands over everybody else. I mean, he's the 2 seed. It's Pat Glory. Pat Glory is he was in the NCAA finals last year. He went against Nick Suriano. He was a big underdog then, and he gave Nick Suriano a match and got him to the point where I think he lost by 1, maybe 2 points, where he was on top. He was riding him. He was getting stalling points from Nick Suriano. And the thing, if you could find one thing about Spencer Lee right now, is that when he goes the full 7 minutes, some people say he's breathing hard and he slows down. I'm not buying that, but when you continue to pin everybody in the first period, there might be a little bit to that. There might be a little Francis Ngannou thing going on with him. So if Glory can keep it close and get to the third period, and maybe he pull up one of the biggest upsets in NCAA wrestling history.
Would Glory be your favorite to win if Spencer Lee were out, or is it the style thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some other guys that are pretty good. If you want to talk about like Liam Cronin, I think he's the 3 seed.
Yeah, 3 seed, and another transfer.
Nebraska.
Yeah, transferred into Nebraska this year.
Michael D'Agostino, he's a 12 seed, but I think he's a lot better than a 12 seed if he's healthy. He's been a little banged up if he's healthy. The guy that gave Spencer Lee the toughest match so far is the 4 seed Matt Ramos of Purdue.
Another transfer.
Yeah, so I guess the transfer one is actually going on well. He was up 8-1 in the first period. He threw Spencer Lee twice to his back, but Spencer Lee was so dominant that when he was down 8-1 in the same period, he still got a lead and pinned him. So, wow. A couple other guys that are really strong. The 9 seed Eric Barnett is a All-American, and Patrick McKee, he's the 11 seed, is a multi-time All-American.
Obviously, this is a weight class with a ultra dominant returning champ atop the bracket, but who'd be your dark horse to win this one?
I think the guy I just said last, probably Patrick McKee, and the reason why is I had to pick somebody on the bottom of the bracket because I'd be very surprised if anybody beats Spencer Lee, so I'm picking Spencer Lee to win. But who's of those rest of those guys who can make a run that no one expects? That's how I kind of look at dark horse. And I think Pat McKee might be that guy, being that, I mean, he has to get past Liam Cronin in the quarters and get probably Patrick Glory in the semis. That's a hell of a feat, beating both those guys. But it's really them 3. All the rest of the guys are on the top of the bracket. So that's why I think Pat McKee would be a guy that got a lot of experience. I think they call him the king of the consolations because this guy, he loses, I think it was 2 years in a row. He lost early in the first, second round and came back, and I think it's like fifth and third in back-to-back years. And if you lose early in the NCAAs, you have to win like 5-6 matches in a row.
Yeah. What is your match to watch in this bracket? Either one that's definitely happening or one that's likely to happen.
Yeah, so those are one thing I'm not going to do when it comes to like, hey, watch it for this match is I'm not going to pick a semifinals or a finals match because they're fantastic. Like, obviously the further you go on, the better they're going to get. So I'm looking more earlier matchups, and a matchup I'm really looking at is a rematch of the Pac-12 championship, and that's Brandon Kaler of Oregon State versus Brandon Courtney of Arizona State, who Brandon Courtney was in the NCAA finals 2 years ago against Spencer Lee. So for a 10 seed, he's got a lot of experience. They had a fantastic match last weekend at the conference championships. I think that's a really fun matchup where the winner of that matchup, I think I think both these guys could become All-Americans, but obviously the winner will put themselves in a much better position.
Okay. Give me an upset pick. Obviously this is a seeded tournament, so an upset is what it says on the bracket. I mean, if you had to make one upset pick.
So that's how I kind of looked at them because I mean, we're not a gambling website anyways, and I don't really know. I'm sure you can gamble on NCAAs, but it's usually like pick a winner to win the whole field, not like the individual matchups. At least I don't think there is, especially because it's changing so much too. A matchup going strictly by seeding. I'm going to go all the way down, and this guy, I think everybody would say he's much better than his seed is, and that's the 28th seed, and that's Killian Cardinal. He's West Virginia. He's 10-1 on the season. He's an All-American, I think, 2 years ago. He got such a low seed because, one, he didn't wrestle that many matches, only had 11 matches on the season, but also he dropped out of the conference championship. He was a number one seed in the conference championship, actually pulled out because of injuries, pretty banged up, I guess, going forward. So that's a little worried. Going against Caleb Smith of Appalachian State, he's the champion for the SoCon conference, one of the weaker conferences. So I think Killian, I'd favor him in that matchup.
Not to keep hammering this home, but Killian Cardinal, yet another transfer this year, went from Old Dominion to West Virginia. Transfers all over the place, man.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, what was I talking about earlier?
What's your prediction for the final in this bracket and who wins it?
Yeah, it's going to be super boring, but I'm going to take Spencer Lee, and I'm going to take him over Pat Glory. I'm going to go the 1 and 2 seed.
Okay.
Liam Cronin could get in that finals. The another one, Pat McKee, could be another guy to watch for, but I think Spencer Lee puts on a show. I think he puts on one of the most dominant performances, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a pin, and he becomes a 4-time NCAA champion
with an exclamation point on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you for this weight class and every other weight class, who's somebody that you'd be excited to transfer or transition to MMA after their college career? You've already talked about Spencer Lee, but like, give me a more plausible, realistic one.
Yeah, Spencer Lee would be special, but he's not going to. Spencer Lee he's going to go on to the international scene. I expect him to win a world championship. I expect him to be Olympic gold medalist. Like I think Spencer Lee is that good. Mm-hmm. The guy that stands out to me is probably the guy who threw him, Matt Ramos. Now, again, I don't know what these guys' feelings about wrestling. I'm just thinking about their style. For a guy that was not scared, went right after Spencer Lee took the fight to him, I'll go with Matt Ramos. That has like a MMA mentality.
All right. Moving on to the 133-pound division. Keith, same question as last time. What's your overall thought on the bracket here, the pool of talent?
This is one of the deepest. This is one of the divisions where it's top heavy and it's deep. Like we have someone like that's one or the other. This is not one of them. Like there's 2 or 3 stars, but there's like 5 or 6 guys. And if I'm looking deep, I mean, there's 20 guys, 25 guys that could get on the stand. But there's also, because of that, there's going to be guys that I think could be All-Americans, going to be getting knocked out, early Friday morning. See you later. Back it up. Thanks for coming. So. I think that's the big thing. And then there's a lot of good storylines going on with this one.
Is there an obvious favorite to win this one?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious favorite is the guy who's won it 2 years in a row, Romo Bravo-Young, the 133-pounder for Penn State University. He's undefeated. He hasn't lost a match in, I think 2 years. He's got a hell. I mean, it's yeah. Did he lose one last year? He hasn't lost one this year. I can't remember if he might have lost one last year, but yeah, he's on like 50 something match winning streak. I mean, he's on a run.
Okay. Other favorites in the weight class, like who?
Yeah, Dayton Fix, obviously the guy who's been to the finals 3 in a row. Dayton Fix they've had close matches, like both their matches. Fix was the favorite 2 years ago. I remember like when Bravo Young, I want to say that match might have went to overtime. And then last year, I think he won by 1 point. He got like an early takedown, and Fix, Fix is definitely a more defensive wrestler, while Roman Bravo Young is a more offensive. Another guy that a lot of people are high on is Vito Araujo of Cornell. He's a former All-American. He's done a lot of international wrestling. He's a world champion in freestyle.
Okay.
He's a guy that I think he might even have even more success in the freestyle. I mean, it's so loaded. American wrestling is so loaded right now. But that's a guy that a lot of people like. I think he's the 3 seed. So if him and Fix face each other in the semifinals, that'd be a hell of a matchup.
If you had to name a dark horse in this bracket, who would you say?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a guy that really wasn't even my radar as of a week ago. And he had such a great Big Ten tournament. He didn't win it. He ended up losing to Roman Bravo Young in the finals. But it's Aaron Nagao. He's a freshman for Minnesota that he took on Roman Bravo Young in the Big Ten finals. He rode him out the entire third period and was looking strong, and just having that confidence and giving Roman Bravo Young one of his toughest matches of the year. It sucks for him because he pulled, I think it was the 8 or 9 seed, so he'll have to face, if he makes it far, he'll have to face Bravo Young early. He could face him in the quarters, so that's a little tough. But yeah, that kid's tough. I like him.
Anybody else that viewers should have their eye on in this bracket?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like you look at the 33 guys in the weight class, about 25 of them you should watch. But but some of the guys, like obviously some of the guys, Michael McGee, the Pac-12 champion, multi-time All-American, Kai Orion, I might be saying his name right, the ACC champion. He really, really had a great run in that tournament, pulled out an upset. Sam Latona is another guy that a lot of people are really big on. Of Virginia Tech. Those are some of the guys I'd watch. But this weight class, I mean, you just scroll through the weight class. The guys I didn't mention, like Mickey Philippi, the 9 seed, is an All-American in the past. And just I might, in case someone might have lost in the blood round, that I might call an All-American by accident or something.
Hey, you know what? Real quick, I should have done this off the top, but as a clarification to anybody that is watching this as an MMA fan and is not into college wrestling, here's something for you. All-American at Division I level simply means you finished in the top 8. There you go.
Which is a hell of an accomplishment.
It's a hell of an accomplishment. But if you ever hear, Matt Hughes was an All-American, Logan Storley was a 4-time All-American, that's what they mean. It's not something that the Football Writers Association of America votes on. It's real meritocracy. You finish in the top 8, you're an All-American. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, some other guys, Taylor Lamont, Chris Cannon, All-Americans. Jesse Mendez, a tough freshman that beat Lucas Bird early in the season, an All-American. I mean, this weight class is loaded. Zach Redding at 15 seed. It's tough.
Is this the strongest weight class in the tournament this year? The strongest bracket?
Top to bottom, I say it is. 197 might be the craziest. So, and the top heaviest is 165. So, but this is probably the combination of the both.
Okay. Give me one match to watch. Don't miss.
I'm going to go with a second round matchup. If these guys win their matchup, they got to get there. But Michael McGee, the 4 seed, we just talked about him, All-American, going against Chris Cannon, the 13 seed. 2 All-Americans from last year could be facing each other in the round of 32. Like, that's how loaded this weight class is. That's a great matchup to watch. That would be happening Thursday night.
Any potential upsets jump out to you?
Yeah, there's going to be tons of upsets all throughout, especially in the constellations or wrestleback. But one on the main bracket, I'm going to go right in the very first round. Taylor Lamont, 28 seed, is tough. He's long and lengthy. He's tricky for Wisconsin, taking on Kai Orion from NC State. Those are two really good guys. I can see them both making the podium, but they're facing each other. I like Lamont a lot. I think Lamont might pull the upset in that one.
Keith, give me the final of this bracket and who wins it.
Yeah, so Vito Rizzo is a guy that could really bust up the bracket, but I think what everybody, other than Cornell fans, which I would say of all the teams, I am a Cornell fan, but it's the match people want to see 3 years in a row. I think it's Roman Bro Young versus Dayton Fix, excuse me, of Oklahoma State, and I have flopped on this one. I really want to take Dayton Fix to pull the upset, and you know what? I'm going to say he does it. Fourth time. I'm pulling for him. I have nothing against Roman Bro Young. I think Roman Bro Young's a great ambassador of the sport, everything. I don't want to see a guy lose 4 times. I'm going to say Dayton Fix finally gets over the hump. He makes some kind of adjustment. It's going to be a super close match, and I'm going to say Dayton does it. I think he wins. He finally wins an NCAA championship.
All right, there you go. And so, and that's the very first round, huh?
Yeah, and that was the guy that I was saying. I was just talking up Kyle Ryan as one of the guys to watch.
Who here in this bracket would you be especially excited to see move to MMA in a couple of years? Well,
I think actually, so of all the 1 seeds in the entire one, this is the guy that seems like he might jump over to MMA almost immediately, and that's Roman Young. I mean, he's trained with Dominic Cruz. They spend their offseason training with each other. Him learning BJJ from Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz working on his wrestling. There's been documentaries about it. So Roman Bro Young, I mean, I'd be ecstatic if he came over to MMA. He has the perfect style. He's got long length, he's explosive, great scrambles, good attitude, a little bit chip on his shoulder, but like in a good sense. That'd be fantastic.
All right, moving on up. Let's take a look at the 141-pound bracket at the 2023 NCAA Division I Championships. Talk to me about the overall bracket, the talent pool.
So this is one of the more wide open ones. This is one of the ones I thought was hardest to pick, which is kind of ironic because you have guys who are undefeated, but I don't know if it's as like when I'm ranking pound for pound best guys, these guys, Rear Woods isn't like popping up as in the guys I think of when I think of the pound for pound. So I mean, he's undefeated for Iowa. He's 16-0. Andrew Alvarez of University of Northern Colorado is 23-0. So like, I mean, there's undefeated guys in this weight class, but I still think it's a wide open one.
Okay. We've already talked about him a little bit. Real Woods, now of Iowa, is your number 1 seed. Is he your favorite to win it?
Yeah, he is. He's one of the most defensively sound guys. I heard someone talking about this week. It was something stupid. I'm just going to make up a stat. I don't know exactly what, but it was something like he gave up 16 points all season. Like, you just don't score on him. He used to be called a guy like that didn't blow guys out of the water, kind of just cruises. And that's not the case anymore. He's getting texts, he's getting pins. He's really turned it up. And, going to Iowa, being in a better room with, legendary coaching and legendary, I mean, he's two-way wrestling with, I'm sure he gets in there with Spencer Lee all the time. So, and guys like Max Mirren and other guys in his weight, just a good thing for him. So, yeah, he's probably the favorite. I mean, he's the 1 seed.
Who are other top guys at the weight there?
Yeah, the guy we just talked about, Andrew Alvarez, a guy that I don't think a lot of people were picking him to win it before the season started. I mean, this guy wasn't even an All-American yet, but he's undefeated. He's beaten. He beat at one time. He was as a week ago. He was the number 1 in the rankings before the the coaching voting and the scene. I'm sorry, not the coaching voting. The what's the word I'm looking for? The selection committee.
Okay.
Decides and all that. But his weight of schedule is why he dropped down, and Real Woods, being a Big Ten guy, got the number 1 seed. But he's been great. I mean, he beat Cole Matthews, who at one time was the number 1 guy ranked in this weight class. So that's obviously another guy. He did have a bad loss to Jordan Titus, which doesn't look good. And then he also has that loss in the All-Star Classic to Andrew Arez, but very similar to Real Woods, where he wrestles defensively. Bo Bartlett at Penn State is a guy that a lot of people like and has been strong. And Brock Hardy of Nebraska is really tough. I think he's one of the favorites. So one of those guys are probably the guys to pick it. I'll give you one that's funny about this division. Actually, no, I'll go. Never mind. Go, Karen. Sorry.
Well, you mentioned that this was a wide open bracket, and just hearing you describe that, you basically talked about the mythical number one spot being passed like a hot potato, like multiple times this season. Like he was the number one guy until he lost, and then he lost it. So it's interesting to see how that played out. It's maybe an easier question to ask in a wide open bracket, but name a dark horse in this weight class.
Yeah, I'm going to go with two freshmen. I'm not picking them to win, but guys that could mess up people's brackets. And one is from Iowa State, Casey Swiderski. He's a 24 seed, but he was a highly ranked freshman. He's had some really great moments, but he also is a freshman, so he's had some tough losses. He's only 11-10 on the season, but I think he's much better. And then going all the way down to the 15 seed, another guy, 16-9. So record's not the greatest, but Tom Cook of Virginia Tech is another guy to watch out for, the 15 seed.
And any others out there for viewers to have their eye on?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that could be All-Americans. I'm not expecting – I'd be surprised if these guys won it, but Alan Hart, the 8 seed, is a really strong from Missouri. Another guy, a guy that's going to be facing Casey Swiderski is Oklahoma's Moshe Schwartz. He's really tough. That's a guy that could, place high in as an All-American.
The can't miss match. What's your match to watch?
Yeah, it's going to be broken record. I want to say the match, the guys we just talked about, Casey Schwartz. It's Casey Swiderski and Marshall Schwartz. 24 seed and 9 seed, two guys that I think could be All-Americans this year. So that's very first round.
All right. Would that also be one of your upset picks, or if not, what do you got?
Yeah, that is my upset pick. I'm going to go with Swiderski with a really, really tough matchup against Schwartz. Wouldn't be surprised if Schwartz blows him out the water, but I'm gonna say the freshman steps up his game and he pulls up the upset over Schwartz.
Okay, in this wide open bracket, who makes the finals and who wins it?
Yeah, so this is probably the weight class where I was searching around. I thought about a guy like Bo Bartlett, though. Brock Hardy, like these guys are there, but Cole Matthews is a guy that I just hate his style. Wrestles way too close, not enough offense. Andrew Alvarez, the worry I have is just the inexperience of him. So, I didn't want to pick him, nothing against the guy, but it's not exciting to pick another favorite. Be 3 weight classes in and take the favorite. But I'm gonna go with Real Woods. His top game is so strong. His defense wrestles strong. I'm gonna take him. I'm gonna say he takes over Andrew Alvarez. I really almost want to take Alvarez, especially if he can keep the match on the feet. He's a long, lengthy guy. He's quick, explosive, but Real Woods is so good at scrambling, so good defensively, so smart. I'm going to say Real Woods gets his NCAA championship.
Okay. Tell me if he is, and if he isn't, don't tell me who it is. We'll get there when we get there. But is Woods the most vulnerable number 1 seed?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, cool. Then we'll move on from there. Looking at this bracket, who would you like to see in some MMA shin guards in a gym somewhere in a year?
Yeah, so Real Woods has a little bit of an edge. Like he doesn't mind. Like he can promote himself a little bit, but I'm gonna go with the freshman we already talked about. I'm gonna go with Tom Cook of Virginia Tech. Very fun style, would go exciting moves, throws and stuff. Yeah, that's some of that like stood out to me that I think he could be a fighter.
All right. Moving on up, 8 pounds at a time. We are at the 149-pound division. Keith, talk to me a little bit about the bracket, the pool of talent. How healthy is 149?
Yeah, that's a big thing. It's not healthy. There's a couple big stars that are a little banged up that doesn't. But the good thing is the biggest star isn't, and that's Yanni Diakomahalis going for his 4th title. This might be one of his hardest ones, because he did take a loss early in the season. We'll talk about that later on. He's had actually closer matches sometimes. He spent a lot of time during the offseason doing freestyle wrestling. He actually had a freestyle match during the season. Some people say he's distracted. But one thing about Yanni is when it comes to the NCAA title, you see this guy bring up the intensity and the focus. He beats guys and he complains that he didn't beat him bad enough. I can't remember what match it was where he won like by 4 or 5 points. I want to say it was the semis last year, and he was like, "Yeah, I wrestle like a pussy." Like, I gotta be better. Like, I don't remember who he beat, and I'm sorry, but that's the kind of standard this guy holds himself to. That's why he's got to go down as one of the greatest. Even if he doesn't win this NCAA title, he still will go down as one of the greatest wrestlers ever.
Question about Diakomahalis, because the first wrestler to win 4 NCAA Division I titles was, of course, Pat Smith. And when he came along, I mean, his 3 brothers had come along, John, Mark, Leroy. John, arguably still the greatest amateur wrestler of all time. So by the time he came along, people were already saying, as a freshman, like maybe he could be the first to win 4 NCAA titles. When he won one his freshman year, I mean, he wasn't perfect that year. I mean, I don't remember his exact record, but he ended up something like, like 20-10. Like he'd lost some matches that first year, but once he won that first one, it was like, oh, buckle up. This could be the guy. Did Yakima Hollis come in with that kind of hype off the bat, or did people have to kind of catch up as he dominated?
No, he was unbelievable. I think did he lose? I think 1 match his freshman year. I want to say he won like the New York State Championship 5 times. For some reason, that's standing out to me. Like he won as an 8th grader. Okay,
so it's the thing like Cale Sanderson, where he didn't lose in high school either, and everyone knew he could be the guy.
Yeah, like he might have lost 1 or 2, but I'm saying like, he's
okay.
He was always the guy and just gotten better and better. Yeah, he's the man. I mean, the guy's won like world championship and Pan Am games outside of, not when he was obviously we're talking about freshman year or anything, but like I think he won cadet championships and stuff. Like this guy's the man.
So he was seen as a great in the making as soon as he showed
Absolutely.
up. Okay.
Absolutely.
Who else? I mean, obviously he sounds like your favorite to win. Who else is kind of at the top there?
Yeah, there's a couple guys that it's even though he's the man, if something happened, this is still a good weight class. The number 2 seed, Sammy Sasso, is a former he's multi-time championship. He was in the finals 2 years ago. He's a guy that's really, really strong. Michael Blockus just had a fantastic tournament with the Big Tens from Minnesota. Max Murin is really strong from Ohio State. We got a couple guys I'm saving later on. But yeah, those are 3 guys to really watch, higher seed guys.
Okay. If you had to pick a dark horse out of this one, who would it be?
Yeah, it's gonna be a similar theme that I did earlier, and that's gonna be it's gonna be freshmen. I'm gonna give a bunch of these guys. There's 4 really good quality freshmen in this weight class. One, the 4 seed for Virginia Tech, Caleb Henson, was one of the top recruits coming in. He's been great this season. 21-3 for Virginia Tech. Panero Johnson, the 5 seed, just won the Big Ten for Iowa State. He actually gave Yanni a decent match earlier on in the season. Shane Van Ness of Penn State, anytime a recruit gets to Penn State is good. One that, that not too many people were talking about. I'm trying to find a seed right here. The freshman Jackson Arrington. Where's his seed? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding him. Oh, the 17 seed. So he'll face he'll face Yanni right in the very first round.
Okay.
I'm sorry. He would face, not in the first round, if he wins his first match against a tough Colin Rebuto of Northern Iowa. That's actually a tough matchup. But if Jackson Arrington of NC State can get past that, him and Yanni would face off in the round of 32. Those are a couple guys. But I'm going to give another one that's the dark horse, and he's the ultimate dark horse of the entire tournament. And it comes down to how healthy he is. And anybody who follows NCAA wrestling knows that not only is he the dark horse, he's the biggest threat to Yanni in the entire field. It's the guy who beat him this season, multi-time All-American Austin Gomez of Wisconsin. He's the 15 seed. He's 10-4. He lost a match early in the season to, I want to say it was another freshman. Oh, no, to Panero Johnson beat him. Then he had a couple injury defaults and different things happened. He lost to, I want to say he lost to somebody else too, but he's been injured. So he just lost at the Big Ten tournament, and then he got disqualified, and then he had injury default out. He looked terrible in the first round. But I was watching a podcast with another guy that was texting with Austin Gomez, and Gomez like, I'm going to surprise a whole bunch of people. So if Austin Gomez is 90%, he's the dark horse. I mean, he's a stud.
And I mean, in that whole kind of pack of wrestlers that you mentioned there, you did mention Colin Robildo. Now, he is wrestling for Northern Iowa, but he transferred from Brown. So does it make him better that he left New England, or does that only hold true in MMA?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Give me a match to watch here.
Yeah, it's the match to watch. One of the matches, the whole tournament in the round of 32, Austin Gomez versus Sammy Sasso could happen in the round of 32, which it's exciting if you're a wrestling fan to have a match Thursday night that has. I mean, the winner of that could go to the finals. The winner of that could win it. That said, it's also disappointing too because one of the favorites is going to go out early.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this comes down to if Austin Gomez is healthy. But when they've had their last match, they wrestled, I think it was the All-Star Classic. They had an unbelievable, it was like stole the show, that matchup. That's a really fun matchup.
I mean, and I'm going to ask you a quick off-script question here, but you mentioned this being a fortunate and unfortunate matchup in the first round. Is there anyone in this bracket that you think is badly seeded that's creating that early matchup? Like, is someone misseeded?
Well, Gomez is the guy, and I understand why, because you got to take these losses. He came in as a wild card because he didn't get in the top 9 in the Big Tens because he had the forfeit out. I just guys, come on, this selection committee. You could have, who you really screw out of it? Not Gomez at 15. It's Sammy Sasso,
who should be fighting a much, much easier.
Yes, he should have a much easier match. Now, the flip side of that is it's an easier matchup in the quarters and the semis than because you're not going against Gomez in those rounds. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you go straight chalk, he's still going against Kyle Parko of Arizona State in the semis. That's still a tough matchup. I mean, obviously, or Brock Moeller, or Yaya Thomas, the guy we didn't talk about other guys. Like I just mentioned, Brock Moeller and Kyle Parko. Yaya Thomas is a guy he's a 7 seed. He's been banged up, so who knows how healthy he is. But that's another tough matchup. So Sammy Sasso, if he wins this if he can get to the finals and upset Yanni Diakomahalis, and that would be a legendary run to go through the field that he has to go through to get it.
Give me an upset pick.
So this was a tough weight class, and I'm going to go with an upset pick, and it's not going to seem like a big upset because he's the 5 seed. But I'm actually going to say Panero Johnson goes all the way to the semis. I mean, the 4 seed's supposed to go to the semis. So I'm picking Panero Johnson, the freshman, over the other freshman, Caleb Hansen, even who's a higher seed.
Okay.
If Panero Johnson was on the bottom of the bracket, I might have picked him to go to the finals. I'm high on Panero Johnson. I'm picking Panero Johnson to take third.
Okay. So who's going to be the final and who's going to win it?
All right. So Yanni's going to win it. He's going to win 4. I think we get the match we want. I'm hoping Austin Gomez is healthy. I'm going to say Austin Gomez surprises everybody. I'm going to say he's healthy enough. I say he beats Sammy Sasso. He goes on that run, and I'm going to say Austin Gomez. Again, I might be really stupid. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets knocked out there and injury defaults his way out or something like that. But I'm taking Yanni over Austin Gomez. Yanni gets to avenge his one loss and forever.
All right. I know that you are not personally a gambling man, but if I give you $100 and say you have to bet it on either Spencer Lee or Yanni Diakomahalis to win it, who do you pick? Spencer? Okay.
It's 1, the weight class, 2, as dominant as Yanni is, Spencer Lee's another level of dominance.
Awesome. One of these guys to pick to transition to MMA.
Yeah, I've been talking about this guy who is the 15 seed of the weight class. I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's Austin Gomez. I mean, you see the way he wrestles; he's so explosive. He got disqualified for slamming his opponent on his head last week. So,
that's a good sign.
He's got MMA. A little chip on his shoulder. He's a guy that took it to Yanni, wasn't scared of him, even though he's lost to him multiple times. Austin Gomez.
Let's take a look, Keith, at the 157-pound bracket. Talk to me. Give me the temperature overall of the weight class of the bracket.
Yeah, this is the one that's all over the place. We've had multi number ones. We've had it's a wide open bracket. We've had guys that people gave up on who's now a favorite. We've had guys who was a favorite. Brayton Lee started the season as the number 1 guy in the weight class. He's not even in the tournament. A lot of that had to do with injuries. He had some really tough losses. He was not healthy. He was an All-American in 2021. He injured out last year before 2022, injured out again this year. Some just really bad luck for the poor guy. He went in the Big Tens and just last weekend, was not himself, and had a terrible tournament, didn't make the field. That's sad, but the rest of the weight class, we've bounced around number ones, Peyton Robb, and now it's Austin O'Connor's the number one. Austin O'Connor was the guy that kind of the same thing happened to him last year. He was an NCAA champion 2 years ago. Goes in last year, had a disappointing. I still think he got All-American, but had disappointed because he was like wrestling injured the entire season. Came in this season, moved up a weight. Some people thought he was too small, kind of forgotten. The run he had 2 years ago, people forgot about it. And now he's the number one seed, and he's been undefeated, and he's been fantastic. And he's the favorite.
Okay. Is he your favorite?
Yeah, like the bet. If I was an odds maker, I was setting odds. Yeah, I'd put him as the number one.
Okay. Who else is kind of orbiting that most likely to win? Like, who are the other favorites here?
Well, Levi Haynes is the 2 seed. He's a freshman. Peyton Robb was the number one guy in the country as of the conference championship, lost in sudden victory last weekend. Had a moment in the match against Levi Haynes in the first period where a lot of people thought he didn't get a takedown that he should have, which could change the whole tournament, change the whole seeding, changes everything. He could be sitting at the number one seed right now. That happens in wrestling. Josh Humphrey is a guy that nobody's talking about. The guy's undefeated. He wrestles for league guys. He's a smaller conference up. He didn't have that many matches, but he's undefeated. So there's another guy that's I'd say one of the favorites.
Name me a dark horse in this bracket.
Yeah, I'll do this. Let me give some other guys to watch first, and then I'll give you a dark horse.
Okay, sure.
All right, so Bryce Andonian of Virginia Tech is a guy that a lot of people like. He's been strong. He got beat up by Austin O'Connor the first time they fought, and then they faced each other in the ACC championship last weekend and had a much closer match. I think he lost by 1 point. He's a 7 seed for Virginia Tech. That's a guy to watch out for. Ed Scott is always there, All-American type guy for 8 seed for NC State. Jared Franek is a small school guy that doesn't get a lot of love. He is he undefeated? No, he's not undefeated this year. Oh, he's 22-1. So North Dakota State, who's pulled off a lot of upsets this year as a team. He's the 4 seed. And another All-American that hasn't been too great this year, but he's a return All-American. I hate his style, but Will Lewan, he's a 9 seed. That's another guy to watch. Okay.
And is any of those guys your dark horse, or did you say?
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to Bryce Andonian.
Okay.
He's better than a 7 seed. Like, I think he could, be the 4 seed or something like that. The improvements he made just in 1 week. In 1 month for the face Austin O'Connor. He's a guy that could win the whole thing. If everything, it'd be a little bit of a surprise, but if everything broke well, his long length, his style, he could win the whole thing.
Okay. Give me a match to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record again. I'm going to go with Bryce Andonian versus Levi Haynes. It could happen in the quarterfinals. Like, those are 2 of my favorite guys in this tournament. And a really exciting quarterfinal matchup that would happen Friday morning.
All right. Any likely or possible upsets jump out at you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a really bold one. I'm going to go really upset. I'm going to pick a guy who's 16-0 to lose to a guy who's 11-9. I'm going to go with the 28 seed. Been a disappointment for Ohio State all year. True freshman Patty Gallagher, but he was one of the most hyped recruits coming in the season. I'm going to say he upsets Josh Humphreys, who's undefeated all season, in the very first round. I know nobody else is picking that pick. I'll be bold. I'm going to say Patty Gallagher finally puts it together and reminds people why he was so highly recruited and pulls an upset over Josh Humphrey in the first round.
Okay. Who makes the final and who wins it?
Yeah, this is tough. So I think Austin O'Connor makes it. I just think stylistically, the guys on the top, I can't see Franek beating him. Ed Scott might be tough. Will Lewan style, I just don't see him. So I really like Austin O'Connor make the finals. And I'm gonna go with Levi Haynes, the 2 seed. So it's not really exciting with the 1 and 2 seed. But I'm going to go with Levi Haynes to win. He's a red shirt who wasn't even guaranteed the roster spot. They weren't sure if they're going to pull his red shirt because that's what he was doing. They did pull his red shirt, so he's a true freshman wrestling. I'm going to say he wins an NCAA championship, beating a former NCAA champion in Austin O'Connor. I'm going to say Penn State has this unbelievable ability to get the 2 and the 3 seeds to win national championships. They do it every year. And, I think about it 2 years ago with the Romo Bravion when he went against Dayton Fix, and everyone expected Dayton Fix to win it, and Romo Bravion won. Way back in the day when Bo Nickel was a 2 seed, like they find a way, and I think just as Bo Nickel said, that's what they do. I think they do with Levi Haynes this year.
Draft one of these guys to join a good MMA gym within the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the guy we just talked about too. I'm gonna say Austin O'Connor. I mean, you see him when he's got his dreadlocks going and they're falling apart. He has this like little hillbilly thing going in him, a little bit like a Bryce Mitchell kind of style. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Austin O'Connor.
All right. We move up by another 8 pounds, and let's have a look at the 165-pound bracket here. Keith, give me the 30,000-foot view on this bracket, on this weight class this year.
Yeah, so this was the sexy weight class of the year because we had 2 returning national champions who had an incredible matchup last year, Keegan O'Toole and Shane Griffin, both coming back. Neither one jumped out of the weight class, didn't move up, anything like that. So you had 2 NCAA champions. Then you add David Carr, who was an NCAA champion at 157 2 years ago, coming up. So now you have 3 NCAA champions in the same weight class. Oh, we're not done yet. Quincy Monday, who started, was a lot of people had the number 1 at 157, started off the season at 157, actually moves up into a harder weight class at 165. He was at NCAA finals last year. So, I mean, this weight class alone, and there's other guys in the weight class too that we'll talk about.
Okay. Who is the favorite to win it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. If you asked us in November, it would have been Keegan O'Toole, or you might have had 30 hardcore wrestling fans and said who's the favorite, and 10 people would have said David Carr, 10 people would have said Shane Griffin, 10 people would have said Keegan O'Toole. The way the wrestling is actually taking place this year, it's David Carr. David Carr. I mean, Shane Griffin's lost some matches to Matt Olgwin that didn't anybody expect to happen. Yeah, he lost to him twice, 2 weekends in a row. And David Carr has, and actually, I'm sorry, I might be wrong about 2 weekends in a row, but it was 2 recently. And David Carr has beaten Keegan O'Toole twice this season. The last match was a lot closer, but he pinned him in sudden victory. Again, it was sudden victory, he pinned him, but the first match wasn't that close. So, I mean, David Carr is the guy.
I mean, you've already kind of mentioned some of the other favorites at the weight.
Yeah.
Talking about this 3-headed thing at the top. Is there anyone that slots in alongside those 3, or is it?
Quincy Monday. I'd say he's like the next tier down. But I mean, an NCAA finalist. Obviously, his father is Kenny Monday, the Olympic champion, and there's that legacy between Kenny Monday and I'm sorry, I can't remember David Carr's father's first name, but I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but his dad, they had a rivalry back in the day, 2 of the greatest American wrestlers going against each other. And then their sons, years later, actually getting a rivalry, same weight classes.
Oh, Nate Carr. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nate Carr, yes. And I think that's fantastic, that like this rivalry going on. Some other guys to watch is this guy, the Pac-12 champion, Matt, and I might be pronouncing his name wrong, Olgwin. He beat Shane Griffin twice this year. Came out of nowhere. Julian Ramirez, the EIWA, he's a champion, All-American. Dean Hamidi just won the Big Ten. Pat Kennedy from Iowa is tough. Carson Karchler, excuse me, was an All-American last year. We'll talk about it in a little bit. So he's another guy. And then Cameron Amin is another guy from Michigan, is really strong.
Is any of those guys your dark horse to go deep in this tournament? Yeah,
it's good. It's Dean Hamidi. And what I say, like, is he a dark horse? No, I think he's like the 3 seed, but it's like one of those ones. No one's ranking him as the 3rd best guy in the division. So right. Some of it just has to do with, but Big Ten guy, long and lengthy guy, wrestles in the best conference. No one's putting him in that upper tier, but because of his style and his length, I wouldn't be surprised if he can pull an upset.
Anyone else to watch outside of that top tier? Or you already mentioned.
Yeah, I mentioned a bunch of guys.
Give me a match not to be missed.
But I mean, I don't know if we're even going to get this, because they both, especially Shane Griffin's got to get, Shane Griffin's got to find a way to beat Matt Elkwin. Though Matt Elkwin has a tough matchup against Bubba Wilson of Nebraska in the very first round. That's a fantastic matchup. But, I mean, if David Carr and Shane Griffin can face each other in the quarterfinals, to have two NCAA champions going against each other in the quarterfinals, I mean, what's bigger than that?
All right. Any upsets jump out at you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a guy that I was starting to talk about, then I stopped, and that's Carson Garcella. He's a guy that was an All-American a couple of years ago. Last year. He in the off season for Ohio State lost the wrestle off. Like he wasn't even going to be the varsity wrestler, and had some couple losses in the early season. But he just had a great Big Ten tournament, and I'm actually going to take him to win. Not a huge upset. He's a 10 seed. But I'm gonna take him to win the second round matchup over Michael Caliendo of North Dakota State. I think Carcella's gonna beat him.
And you've talked about some super high level wrestlers up the top here that have history with each other. Give me the two guys who make the finals and who gets his hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm picking some other upsets, but like the top two guys, I'm going with Carr and I'm going with Keegan O'Toole. If you asked me in the beginning of the season, I would have taken Keegan O'Toole because of his unbelievable ability to scramble. But David Carr is actually winning scrambles against Keegan O'Toole, which I didn't expect. David Carr is so hot right now, wrestling with a lot of confidence. I'm gonna say David Carr does again. I'd say he beats Austin O'Toole for the third time. Excuse me, Keegan O'Toole for the third time this season.
All right. I've asked you this question for every bracket so far, obviously, but now we're talking about 165, where these guys are probably going to be going into a weight class in MMA where you better damn well be able to wrestle if you want to get anywhere. Draft somebody from this bracket to switch over to MMA.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the easiest ones, and that's going to be Quincy Mundy. I mean, he's Kenny Mundy's son. Kenny Mundy obviously is fought an MMA fight, way back in the day, but he's coached. I think he was with the Black Stallions for a long time. I don't know if he's still around there, but he's been around the MMA circle for a long time. So I think Quincy Mundy is probably the most obvious pick.
All right. Next up at the 2023 NCAA Division I Wrestling Championships, we're going to talk about the 174-pound weight class. Keith, give me the overall look at this bracket, at this division.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one of the top heavy guys. Kata Sirachi is going for his third championship in this weight class. Mikhail Lewis won a national championship a couple of years ago. He's in the weight class. But again, it's to me, it's like a three-man race in this one where a bunch of other guys kind of like another group fighting to get on the podium, probably not fighting for the championship.
Okay. Who's the favorite to win it? Not necessarily your favorite, but who's the favorite?
Yeah, Kata Sirachi.
Okay.
I mean, he's been untouchable this season. He can win matches where it looks close on the scoreboard, but when you actually watch the match, it's not. Like his match against Mikhail Lewis at the All-Star Classic, I think he won 1-0. So it's like, oh wow, that's a really close match, but it wasn't. Like he rode Mikhail Lewis the entire time. When he was at bottom, he got right up. He was never in danger the entire match. They had an incredible match last year at the NCAAs, and Kata Sirachi just took it to another level.
Who are some others to watch in this weight class, and who would be your dark horse to make a good run here? Yeah,
I already mentioned Mikhail Lewis, and in a sense, Mikhail Lewis, I'm going to actually put him as the dark horse because of former NCAA champion. He fought Kata Sirachi strong last year. He went into the NCAA tournament last year as not the guy people were talking about. There was other guys that was going to challenge Kata Sirachi, not Mikhail Lewis. Mikhail Lewis made the finals, had a great match, so maybe he can step it up. And the other guy is the 2 seed, Mikey Labriola. Mikey Labriola is the guy that has given Kata Sirachi the tough matches. He did beat Mikhail Lewis this season. So those are probably the two main guys. Now, other guys to watch that could challenge to All-American, and they're really tough. I think the EIWA champion Chris Foca, Ethan Smith, Alex Faison, Clay Lott, Peyton Mako, Dustin Plott, these are guys that are all probably battling between that. Yeah, I think 3 is available. I'd be surprised they can make it to the finals, but 3 to 8.
Okay. Give me a match to watch.
You know what? A match to watch. I would probably. There's a couple ones that I was looking at, and I'm trying to figure out which one I want to pick. I'm gonna go with. You know what? Like I said, I think there's a lot of guys fighting for, and All Americans, and Nelson Brands versus Alex Faison. They're facing each other at. Is the first round? Yeah, they're facing each other. Yeah, they're facing each other. The 11 seed and the 22 seed. Facing each other in the very first round. I mean, those two guys, I think, that are, hopeful to get on the stand, and they're going against you in the first round. That's fun to watch.
Okay. Give me an upset pick that jumps out at you.
Yeah, this was another one that was tough, but I'm going to go the 23 seed. This is actually one I'm probably pretty confident on. I'm going to say Mickey O'Malley, the 23 seed. He's taking on Rocky Jordan of Chattanooga, Mickey O'Malley of Drexel. Okay. Two smaller schools, but I think O'Malley's going to win that one.
Okay. You've kind of alluded to half of the answer to this question, but tell me who you think makes the finals and who you think wins. Yeah,
it's going to sound so boring. I think it's going to be Starachi and Labriola, the top 2 guys, and I think Starachi wins. He's better on the feet. He's better on top. He's better at every position. Carter Starachi is one of the best pound-for-pound wrestlers in the NCAAs, and he kind of gets overshadowed, which is really funny because he's a guy who pumps himself up. He's not scared to talk trash, which is surprising. That he doesn't get enough, shine.
Mm-hmm. But this is a season that already had its main headlines written.
Sure,
for every week.
And it's Penn State, so he kind of gets grouped in with all the Penn State guys. So the individualism doesn't get shined on him as much.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm going to ask you about the crossover to MMA. I would be remiss in not mentioning that your number 9 seed at 174 is Mr. Edmund Ruth of Illinois, younger brother of 3-time 174-pound champ Ed Ruth, and who actually coaches him now. Like if you're an MMA fan watching this, and you're like, what happened to Ed Ruth? Ed Ruth is an assistant coach at the University of Illinois. When that happened, Edmund transferred from Lehigh to Illinois. If not Edmund, to maybe make a better run of it than his brother, then who would you draft out of here to switch over to MMA after college?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the 17 seed from Indiana, Donnell Washington. He was the last guy to actually beat Carter Starachi. It was like 3 years ago or something like that, 2 or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Carter Starachi did not forget that. So when he faced each other this year, he was like talking shit to him on Twitter and everything, and then beat him. And then they had some words, and like they were about to throw down. Like Donnell was going after him, trying to throw blows. He seems like an MMA fighter to me. So.
Outstanding. Keith, let's talk a little bit about the 184-pound bracket at the NCAA Championships this year. Take a moment to give me the overall temperature of the division and the health of the bracket. How's it look?
It's top heavy. Definitely top heavy with a couple stars, and there's 4 or 5 guys battling for All American, but there's a big gap between the top 3 guys and everybody else.
Okay. Who is the favorite to win, kind of according to consensus, not your favorite?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the ones I think the consensus is that the ranking committee got this one wrong. And I understand one guy has a loss, and that's why. But the number 3 seed, Aaron Brooks, is the favorite. He's one of the biggest favorites in the tournament. He's the 2-time reigning NCAA champion. He lost early on in a match, and that's what happened. And he didn't face Parker Kyson in a actual NCAA matchup this year. Parker Kyson and Trent Hidley split matchups against each other, but Kyson won the last one, so that's why he got the 1 seed. But Aaron Brooks should be that 1 seed.
Okay. So who are some of the other favorites in this bracket?
Yeah, the 2 guys I just said, Parker Kyson, the actual number 1 seed, and then the number 2 seed, Trent Hidley. You got the big, we have the Big 10 champion, the Big 12 champion, the ACC champion. Those are your top 3, and I think it's a pretty good gap between everybody else.
All right. After that big gap, who are some other interesting ones to watch, and do you see a dark horse?
Yeah, Marcus Coleman. Marcus Coleman is actually the 5 seed from Iowa State. That's someone to watch out for. Caleb Romero, the 6 seed for Ohio State. is strong. Hunter Boland of Virginia Tech, the 7 seed. Oh, Gavin Kane, the 11 seed of North Carolina. Those are some guys that I'll be watching for. Guys I'm predicting to become All-Americans.
Okay. Give me a match to watch. Like, what's one you're excited for?
Yeah, so this is the only time I'm going to do this today, but I'm actually going to go with a semifinals matchup, and that's going to be Brooks versus Hidley. Aaron Brooks of Penn State and Trent Hidley of NC State. They are, in my opinion, even though Kykerson has beaten Hidley, I'm not saying Kykerson can't beat Hidley, but Hidley has given Aaron Brooks better matchups than Kykerson does. So, in my opinion, this might be the finals matchup.
Okay.
So I think that's probably why, that's why I'd go with that one.
All right. Name me an upset that you see as likely or plausible.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a tough one. I was looking around, but I'm going to go with the 4 seed, Trey Munoz. He's the 4 seed for Oregon State. Lenny Pinto of Nebraska has actually beat him already this year, was it this year? Or it might have been last year. I'm sorry, but for Nebraska, he's already beat him. He's a 13 seed, so they could face each other in the second round. So I think that's one to watch for.
Okay. You've kind of talked around this already, but who makes the finals and who wins?
Yeah, it's Aaron Brooks versus Parker Kyson. I think it's one of the easiest ones to pick. I don't see anybody challenging Kyson. I think Kyson has almost a walk. I mean, not a walk. There's always guys, but a walk to the finals, and I think Aaron Brooks dominates him. One guy we didn't mention, the dark horse. The one dark horse to watch is Marcus Coleman. He's the only guy to beat Aaron Brooks this year. If they face, I don't expect it to happen again, but that's something to watch for too.
Okay. You've already mentioned him by name, but our number 4 seed Trey Munoz is, of course, the son of former UFC contender Mark Munoz. If not him, whom would you draft into MMA out of this bracket?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going with was because of that connection. Because it's hard because when these guys do interviews, they don't get asked about MMA or anything like that. Yeah. So that's why I try to find the connection. So that's what I was going with.
And there's no possible way he hasn't been exposed to it because his dad had his own career.
He was active afterwards, coaching and everything. Yeah,
and I mean his dad wasn't a perfect fighter, but want to talk about turning your wrestling into savage ground and pound?
Oh yeah,
Munoz with Fedor scary for a year or 3 there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and you asked a question: who's the number 1 seed that's most likely to lose? Is Parker Kyson, because I don't think he's
right. Yeah, kind of off the top, you said your number 3 seed is your real number 1 wrestler in this division. So, got it. Okay, second from the top or bottom, depending on how you look at it. We're looking at the 197-pound division at the 2023 NCAA Division I Championships. If you're an MMA fan, light heavyweight is a kind of a glamour division for crossovers, as well as, a glamour division in MMA itself. I'm thinking of Mark Kerr and Randy Couture having it out back in the day. Tell me about this division, man. What's it look like this year?
Yeah, this is the craziest division. It's funny because it's usually not our sexy division in the world of MMA, but this is not. It's crazy because it's wide open. There's about 15 guys could win it all, but also the seeding, the way the seeding went out, the top half of the bracket is absolutely insane. We got returning NCAA champions coming at 9 seeds and stuff. This weight class. I wouldn't have guessed it when the season started that the weight class I'm most excited for the NCAA was going to be 197, but it might be.
Well, I mean, you're talking about Max Dean of Penn State, right? The 9 seed. Kind of walk a listener who doesn't follow wrestling all season through here. Like, how does a returning champ fall to the 9 seed? Like, what happened to him? Did he have some early losses, late losses?
He had both. He lost matches. Like, he lost to Michael Baird of Lehigh. He lost to Michael Baird and
who used to wrestle for Penn State.
Yeah, they were teammates. He left Penn State because Max Dean came to, because Max Dean originally transferred to Penn State last year, and then got Laird to leave, because and then I'm sorry, Baird to leave, and then Laird is another guy that beat him for Ryder, and they beat. I don't remember which order it was, but they beat him back-to-back nights.
Wow,
which is unheard of for an NCAA champion. And then he made the Big Ten finals last week, if he wins that one, he probably comes in at like a 2 or 3 seed. They probably fix everything. He loses to Silas Allred, a freshman from Nebraska.
So they were all kind of, I guess those guys were all kind of reading the Bubba Jenkins book of like leave Penn State and then like turn around and beat the guy that replaced you. Like,
there you go. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Thank you kind of for that illumination. Who is the favorite, like the consensus favorite to win it, even if it's not your favorite?
Yeah, it's Nino Bonacorsi. He's a former, he's been a multi-time All-American. He was in the finals a couple of years ago. He's 16-0, very strong. One of these guys, start of the season was like, I don't think he was even ranked in the top 10, which is kind of really disrespectful for a guy he's got a lot of experience and been very successful, but wasn't even in the top 10 and just slowly kept creeping. Guys losing, he kept winning. Guys losing, kept winning, and now he's number one.
Which school is he?
Pitt.
Okay, thank you. Who are some of the other favorites kind of orbiting around the top of the bracket there?
Yeah, the Rocky Elam for Missouri. He was a 1 seed for a while. He got upset. He was in the 1 seed for probably about a month and he got upset. Silas Allred now of Nebraska came out of nowhere. Nebraska had a fantastic Big Ten tournament. Like they had, I don't know how many champions they had, but they had a bunch. And then obviously Max Dean. I mean, he's a returning NCAA champion. Penn State has a history of stepping up when it gets really tough. And so that's another guy, obviously, is one of the favorites.
Okay. Outside of, or, beneath that obvious top shelf there, who are some others to watch and who's a dark horse to make some noise in this bracket?
Yeah. I want to find his seeding. He's a high seed. The two guys that beat, I'll say this, two guys who beat Max Dean, I didn't originally had him on my list, but I should mention them. Ethan Laird of Ryder and Michael Beard of Lehigh. They're both really strong. They could win the NCAA championship. Mikhail Foy of Minnesota, 15-10, but had a really good tournament at the Big 10s. Big 12, excuse me. No, I'm sorry. Minnesota's Big 10. Big 10.
Yeah.
And the other one, Jacob Warner of Iowa. He was in the NCAA finals last year. Started off, had some bad losses in the early season, and ended up having a good tournament too. So that's a guy I put him as my dark horse because people keep talking about, Max Dean, he had some losses and people gave up on him, but he's still an NCAA champion. Well, no one's talking about Warner, who was, finalist that, could put together and win the whole thing.
Okay. Give me a match to watch that's you're most excited for.
Match to watch at 197. I'm gonna go with the quarterfinals. Bonacarsi. If he's got to face either Allred or Dean, whoever wins their matchup. So they got to win that 32 matchup and then Bonacarsi in that one. So that's a tough road for both. Like the number one and number two guy in the Big Ten championship.
Okay.
Allred, if he wins the whole tournament, what a freaking run. Think about it. He's got to go. Let me see. I keep bouncing things around, so I apologize. He's the 8th seed. He's got to go through a tough Michael Batista of University of Virginia, who could actually get on the podium himself if everything breaks right. I'm not predicting it, but everything breaks right. Then he probably likely goes against Max Dean in the second round. So you win the Big Ten. You got to go to the guy that could become an All-American, goes against a returning national champion, Max Dean, then has to beat likely the number 1 seed in Nina Bonacarsi. And of course, when I say this, those guys get upset too. And then just to that, then he's got to win the semis and the finals against whoever makes those. So, if he wins, that's another incredible run if he does.
Well, obviously, it would take a couple of upsets for him to do it. Do you see any likely upsets anywhere on the bracket or any jumping out at you?
Let's see. I had one, and I think I mixed up my weight classes for a second because I was doing Munoz again. So I think I wrote Munoz twice. So I apologize. This is not good.
I'll cut it out. I'll leave myself a note. Yeah.
Yeah, because for some reason I think I copied and pasted that one again. All right, let me give it an upset. Okay, I got one for you. All right, I'm gonna play a broken record again. That's an interesting one. Would it be crazy if I go a 16 seed over the number 1 seed?
That'd be pretty wild. Yeah.
North Dakota State has been pulling upsets all season. I can't do it. I was going to go with Austin Pence over Nico Bonacorsi in the first round, or the second round. I got another one. All right, I'm ready.
Right, go for it.
Yeah, it's tough. Silas Allred wrestled fantastic. Seeding wise, it's not an upset. But I say he beats Max Dean again. He took him down. He was beating him on the feet. I think he does it again. I think he beats Max Dean in the second round, which I think a lot of people look at as an upset to beat him back to back. But that's not my upset pick. I'm gonna say he does it again the next round. I say he upsets the number 1 seed. I have not picked an upset of a number 1 seed. I picked every number 1 seed to at least make it to the finals. I picked some of them to lose the finals. But I'm gonna say he beats Nino Bonacorsi too in the quarterfinals. And guess what? I'm gonna have him keep going. I'm having freshman Silas Allred from Nebraska go all the way to the finals.
Wow. All right. So that's half of the finals. Who's the other half of the final matchup, and who wins it?
Yeah, it's the guy that's going to beat him, Rocky Elam from Missouri. That's my pick. Rocky Elam. He had an upset earlier, so people kind of jumped off him, but I think Rocky Elam's going to put it all together. He really responded really strong after that. Had some good performances against tough guys. Like he went against Jacob Warner right after that and beat him up pretty good. So give me Rocky Elam. All
right. Look at this field of competitors for me and draft somebody to cross over to MMA.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know what? I'm gonna go with Michael Baird. I like his style. I like his attitude. That chip on the shoulder he carries. I think Michael Baird has some fight in him for Lehigh.
Well, there's no putting it off any further, Keith. We have gone through 9 weight classes, and it is finally time to talk about the big guys. The UFC has taught me that everybody loves 275-pound guys colliding and slapping titties. So tell me what's good in this bracket and kind of how you feel about it overall. You mentioned to me earlier, and I can't remember whether it was on mic or not, that this might be an addition by subtraction thing, that without Gable Steveson here, it becomes more interesting.
Yeah, the press won't talk about this division as much without Gable Steveson, and he still has a year eligibility left. So so him leaving takes away the eyeballs, but because of that, it makes the division wide open. There's 4 or 5 guys that could win this one. There's definitely a favorite, but 4 or 5 guys that could win this one. So I think that makes it a little more exciting than Stevenson just smoking everybody. Like last year, everyone was playing for second.
This year, who's playing for first? Who's the favorite to win?
It's the number 1 seed. He's undefeated. Mason Paris. He's an All-American. He's just stepped it up another level. He's looked great recently. Wins over like Greg Kirkfleet and beat him. It was beating him the entire match last week against a fantastic heavyweight matchup, and then beat him in Southern Victory. Got a stalling call that I didn't really think was stalling late in the match to tie it up. But yeah, Mason Paris.
Okay. Which college?
Mason Paris in Michigan.
Okay. Who are some of the other favorites in this bracket?
The guy we just mentioned, Greg Kirkfleet, the number 2 seed. Tony Cassiope of Iowa. Colton Schultz of Arizona State. He was in the finals last year. He's the guy that Gable Steveson beat up. And then the guy that is – I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I called Kirkfleet the 2 seed. He's actually the 3 seed. The 2 seed who's been dominant, pinning everybody, Wyatt Hendricks of Air Force.
Okay. Beneath that kind of top shelf, who are some of the others to watch? Who's a dark horse maybe that could go far in this bracket?
Lucas Davidson's had a good season for Northwestern. He's a 9 seed. That's someone I'd watch out for. And freshman, I think he might be a freshman too. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank. But Owen Trenfren, freshman, he is the where is he? He's the 7 seed for NC State. Sorry, I don't have the brackets memorized. So let's go, guys. I'd watch for. I think that both could be All-Americans this year.
All right. How about a match to watch?
Let me give you another one. I'll give you another one that no one's talking about. As he's been wrestling really well. Wasn't really on my radar early in the season, but he's been wrestling really well. Is Trent Hilger of Wisconsin. He's the 11 seed, 16-8. That's another guy to watch for. He might be a dark horse.
Okay. Same as in MMA, heavyweight wrestling isn't always the most exciting to watch. Some of the guys aren't quite as dynamic. Sometimes the cardio isn't quite there compared to lighter wrestlers. But give me a match to watch here that's good, likely to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the quarterfinals. Tony Cassiope of Iowa and Colton Schultz of Arizona. If they break that way, Colton Schultz has some tough matchups to get there, like another Colton McCarran, Southern Illinois. Not a one that you mentioned a lot, but he's wrestled really tough this season. But Schultz is the guy. Like, he was in the finals last year, and he had some early losses. Everyone kind of gave up on him, which is kind of silly. And then Cassiope, he's only lost to the best guys this year. So those two guys are interesting. I think both of those guys, I'm not picking them to win it, but if they won it, if they're the champion come Saturday night, like, I would be shocked.
Okay. See any likely upset value in some of these matchups? I'm
going to go back where the guy I just mentioned, Trent Hilger of Wisconsin, the 11 seed. I think he's going to take out Yaroslav Slavikovsky. I might be saying his name wrong, of Harvard. I think he's going to take him out in the second round.
All right.
But another guy, you know what? He's got a tough matchup because a lot of guys like Hunter Katka of Virginia Tech, who's Hilger's facing in the first round. So I'm going to say the winner of that matchup wins. But yeah, Hunter Katka is a guy that a lot of people like. 19-6.
Who makes the finals here and who wins it?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna put the top two seeds in. I'm gonna take Mason Paris and Greg Kurtfleet in it, and I'm gonna do what Penn State does. Penn State finds ways to make adjustments and win matches they lose. They lost a week.
Kurtfleet's the 3 seed.
Oh, 3 seed. I'm sorry.
Okay,
yeah. Wyatt Hendricks. I apologize. I don't know why I keep saying Kurtfleet, the 2 seed. I'm gonna say Kurtfleet wins this time. It's hard to beat a guy 3 times in a row, and Penn State I don't know what they do. They do it every NCAA's, but they make adjustments, and they're so good in the finals. So give me Greg Kurtfleet to become an NCAA champion.
All right. You look at this bracket. College wrestling, unlike MMA, goes all the way up to 285 pounds. So size starts to bear on things when you have to look at dudes and be like, well, can you even make 265 healthily? But you look at this bracket, draft one of these big old hosses for me into MMA.
You know what? The guy that I think would be fantastic is Wyatt Hendricks of Air Force. The problem is the whole Air Force connection. Like, I don't know how much time he has to give, but his style would be really fun. Colton Schultz has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder style, kind of like a mean guy thing. That's another guy. But obviously, Penn State right now, Greg Kurtfleet, with Anthony Cassar, heavyweight from Penn State coming over, Bo Nickel being in the Penn State room. I can see Kurtfleet moving over.
All right. We've done it, man. 10 brackets. We've talked about kind of what to expect, what unexpected things might happen, what bearing in a pie in the sky fantasy world it might have on MMA in 5 years. Let's talk about the stuff that matters to the people that are actually participating in this thing. Give me your top 3 point finishers for the team title.
Yeah, the number one, it's Penn State. They got to run away with this. I picked Srirachi, Brooks, Kurtfleet, and Haynes to win it. So there's 4 champions. I mean, that's me not picking Roma Bravo Young to win, which would not be. It's Roma Bravo Young. So they could have 4 or 5 champions. That's not picking Max Dean. He could win one. That's 6. Bo Bartlett should place very high, I think. So he should become an All-American. Shane Van Ness is another guy that can become an All-American. There's 1 or 2 guys I'm not thinking of. Other than probably 125, they can become on the podium at every single weight class. 125 is the only one that they're not going to have a chance.
Who comes in second and third?
Iowa. I was strong. I wanted to pick the team that I want to say next a third, but Spencer Lee, winning it. Cassiope finishing high. Max Barron finishing high. Real Woods, I picked winning it. So that's 2 champions. They're also deep. Like, they might not have as many All-Americans, but they're going to have point scorers. Like, they're, losing the blood round, or let me think of some guys that I didn't mention for Penn State to watch. I'm assuming Iowa to watch out for. Brody Teske of 133 could score some points. I don't expect him to be an All-American, but he's tough. 41, we have Real Woods. I'm not going to do this. It's going to be boring if I just look down the roster. But, they have a bunch of guys. And then my number 3 team, I'll give you, before I give you my number 3, I'll give you other teams to watch for that I think could get the number 3 spot.
Sure.
Some of the teams I'm looking at: Cornell, I'm NC State, Virginia Tech, Pitt, Ohio State, Missouri, Iowa State. Like, those are the teams that I think they go. But the team I'm going with, the team that's been red hot at the Big Ten, and that's Nebraska. I have all red going to the finals. Peyton Robb could win it. If I think he's probably a lock for an All-American. Liam Cronin's probably a lock for him. He could be in the finals if things break right for him. Who else is on that team? That there's somebody else I'm forgetting. That's an obvious one for Nebraska. But anyways, that's the team. They've been red hot. That's the team that I think that
finishes third.
Yeah, I think Nebraska.
All right.
Which is a team that I don't think a lot of people were expecting before the season started.
Any other overall thoughts on this year's Division I Wrestling Championships?
No, it's going to be really fun. It's going to be historic. The only thing I ask, if you're an MMA fan and a wrestling fan, don't tag me in posts, or please, if you join the chat for UFC 286 recap, don't talk about the NCAA. I'm going to go I don't even know if I'm going to do a Twitter because I'm worried about it. I catch somebody posting about the NCAA. So
no spoilers.
Once the UFC starts, I'm going to turn off the NCAAs. I'm going to record it. Try not to find out what happens, but I'm sure I'm going to find out somehow. But please don't be that guy who ruins it for me. Don't ruin
it for Keith, guys. Well, that has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for the 2023 NCAA Division I Wrestling Championships. Those, once again, take place this week, Thursday the 16th in Tulsa. You can watch them on ESPN and ESPNU. It'll be Thursday, Friday. Everything wraps up on Saturday, while Keith is unfortunately having to watch MMA. All the cool stuff will be happening somewhere else. But I've been Ben Duffy. He's been Keith Shillan. If this is your first time watching one of our previews, I'm sorry. Welcome to our learning curve. We have done, at this point, over 200 podcasts on MMA. We've done previews and recaps for almost every single UFC card of the last several years. We are both wrestling fans. Keith, even more of an aficionado. So we thought we'd throw this out there. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've derive some benefit from it, whether you chanced upon this as a wrestling fan or you're one of our regulars who wonders kind of what the wrestling references we bring into our MMA shows are about. But definitely give us a like, give us a comment. We'd love to hear from you about some of these. If you've got hot takes on some of these brackets, I at least will definitely be able to learn some stuff from you. But thank you. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out our MMA content as soon as this Saturday.
And at least post your finals picks. Yeah, don't give me too much shit for picking this one where I'm probably on. I'm a big fan, but I don't want to see a guy go 0-4. So post your finals picks.